Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Friday, December 4th, 2020. Today I'm going to go over the college basketball games from yesterday and look ahead to today's games and the rest of the weekend's games. College football, we will go over the two games from last night and look ahead to tonight's and the weekend's games. We'll go over the NFL week number 13 slate. We'll talk about an NBA trade that happened the other night that we forgot to get to. And my Fab 5 for each of college football and the NFL and best bet of the day. All right, we'll start in college basketball today. We will go over all the results from a shorter slate Thursday, and then we have a shorter Friday slate as well than we usually would at this time of the year with a bunch of cancellations and whatnot. All right, so Drexel over Quinnipiac 70-58, Rice over Latorno 94-74, Eastern Illinois over Chicago State 78-56. Winthrop over Little Rock 80-75. NC State over UMass Lowell 90-59. Coastal Carolina over Columbia International 113-56. Northern Kentucky over Tennessee Tech 74-65. Utah over Washington 76-62. Bowling Green over Purdue Northwestern 88-67. Western Carolina over Newberry 91-84. FA over Florida National 128-64. Liberty over St. Francis, Pennsylvania, 78-62. The Citadel over NC-A&T, 78-70. Marshall over Wright State, 80-64. UConn over USC, 61-58. Louisiana Tech over UL Monroe, 78-62. Number 3, Iowa over Western Illinois, 99-58. Number 7, Kansas over Washburn, 89-54. Number 16, Virginia Tech over VMI, 64-57. Syracuse over Niagara, 75-45. Drake over Omaha, 87-66. Grambling over East Texas Baptist, 68-59. UCLA over Seattle, 78-52. Oklahoma over UTSA, 105-66. TCU over Northwestern State, 74-68. Southern Utah over Montana, 64-63. Sacramento State over Idaho, 77-55. Pepperdine over St. Catherine, 94-45. Florida over Boston College, 90-70. Its best bet cashes through. Number 25, Arizona State over Cal, 70-62. And St. Mary's over Texas Southern, 82-70. All right, today's slate, it was just announced that Duquesne and Winthrop was canceled. That was supposed to be an 11 o'clock game today. So at 3 o'clock, you have St. Peter's against Maryland. Maryland obviously off to a nice start. They're 2-0. St. Peter's obviously from the Metro Atlantic. My projection for this game, obviously St. Peter's is in New Jersey, so the line's not on FanDuel. My projection for this game is Maryland by 7, and it's 13, so I'm going to take St. Peter's and the points here. St. Peter's obviously, like I said, Metro Atlantic team that isn't bad. So give me St. Peter's plus the points, although I do expect the Terps to win. 4 o'clock Fairfield and Stony Brook. I project Stony Brook as an 11.5 point favorite. And the line for this is not up yet on FanDuel, but ESPN has it at Stony Brook by 4. So I'm going to lay the 4 with Stony Brook. Next up, 5 o'clock, Big Ten Network, Detroit Mercy at Michigan State. I project Michigan State by 28.5. They're favored by 25.5, so I'm going to lay the 25.5 with Michigan State, although there's juice on it at minus 115. Kennesaw State against Creighton. I project Creighton by 41, and there's no line for this yet on FanDuel, and ESPN has a 34, so I'm going to lay the 34 with Creighton. Florida A&M and South Florida. I have South Florida by 8 as my projection. ESPN has 15.5, so I'm going to take Florida A&M in the points. Texas Arlington against Tulsa. I project Tulsa to be getting a half point. Meanwhile, Tulsa's a 7.5 point favorite. I'm taking Texas Arlington plus 7.5, although the juice is on them at minus 115. They're plus 270 on the money line. Westmont and Pacific we can skip. Southeastern Louisiana and Cal Baptist. I project Cal Baptist by 16.5. They're favored by 7.5, so I'm going to lay the 7.5 with Cal Baptist, although the juice is on them at minus 115. 6 o'clock ACC Network, Kent State against number 15 Virginia. I project Virginia by 29.5. They're giving 19.5, so I'm going to lay the 19.5 with the Cavaliers. Juice is on them at minus 115. Central Connecticut against Hartford. I project Hartford by 9.5. And ESPN has it Hartford by 8.5, so I have a whopping 1 point of value with Hartford, so I'm going to lay the 8.5 with Hartford. Georgia State and Charlotte. I project Georgia State to be a 14.5 point favorite. Meanwhile, they're only laying 3.5, so I'm going to lay the 3.5 with Georgia State against Charlotte. Next up, you have Wisconsin, number 4 Wisconsin at Marquette. I project Wisconsin to be giving 7.5. Wisconsin is giving 4.5. So that is a correct line on my part. Or no, I'm sorry. I thought I had 4.5. I screwed that one up. So I value with Wisconsin. So I'm going to lay the 4.5 with Wisconsin, although the juice is on Marquette. So I get value here. Minus 4.5 at minus 108. Alrighty. Next up is Bellarmine against Duke. Bellarmine making its debut. Number 6 Duke is at it after losing to Michigan State. Duke, I project it's a 37.5 point favorite. And I don't have a line for this game yet, so I'm going to actually it says Duke 29, so I'm going to lay it with Duke here. Duke 29 according to ESPN. Alright. William Jessup and UC Davis we could skip. Carver Austin P we could skip. St. Umbro, Northern Iowa we could skip. Sewell Ross and UTSA we could skip. Jacksonville, Georgia, 7 o'clock SEC Network. I project Georgia as a 9.5 point favorite over Jacksonville. Meanwhile, Georgia is only laying a whopping 14.5. So I'm going to take Jacksonville plus the 14.5. The juice is on Georgia at minus 114. So I'm getting the value here. Plus 14.5 with Jacksonville at minus 106. Valparaiso against Purdue. I project Purdue as a 10.5 point favorite. We know Purdue's giving 16.5, so I'm going to take Valpo plus the 16.5 to keep that game respectively close. Jacksonville State against FIU. I predict Jacksonville State by 9.5. Meanwhile, FIU is giving 6.5. I'm taking Jacksonville State plus the 6.5. Minus 105, there's value there. And I'm taking them plus 260 on the money line to win straight up. We can skip Our Lady at the Lord against Texas Rio Grande. Toledo, Eastern Michigan. So we have a Maction game tonight. I project Toledo by 17. Toledo's giving 2.5, so I'm laying the 2.5 with Toledo. Juice is on them, though, at minus 115. Next up, you have McNeese and Stephen F. Austin. I project Stephen F. Austin to be giving 27.5 in their conference opener. And they are giving 14.5, so I'm going to lay it with the Lumberjacks here. Central Arkansas against Memphis. Memphis is, by me, projected a 10-point favorite. Meanwhile, they're giving a whopping 21.5, so I'm taking Central Arkansas plus the 21.5 to keep that within the number. Now we're in the 8 o'clock window, obviously. Arlington Baptist, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, we could skip. Stetson against Miami. I project Miami as a 15-point favorite over Stetson. Miami obviously making their debut tonight. They're 19.5 point favorites. Juices on Stetson at plus 19.5 at minus 118. I'll take it anyway to keep that within the number. South Dakota State, Bradley. I project Bradley as a 1-point favorite over South Dakota State, who really surprised a lot of people at the Pentagon last week. Bradley's favored by 1.5. And the juices on South Dakota State at minus 114. Too close of a call, so I'm going to take the over at 136.5. I think that is an over for me. And I can see this game being a 71-70 type of ball game. It'll go easily over. Crowley's Ridge, Arkansas State, we could skip. North Texas, Mississippi State at 8 o'clock on the SEC Network. I project North Texas as a favorite in this game by... Or wait a minute. Do I have Mississippi State projected by 7.5 or North Texas? I think it should be North Texas. And it is. I put a minus instead of a plus here. So I project North Texas by 7.5. Meanwhile, the Bulldogs are laying 2.5. Juices on them at minus 114. I'm going to take North Texas plus 2.5. Getting value at minus 106. I'm taking them plus 128 to win straight up as well. Tennessee Notre Dame canceled. 9 o'clock ESPN 2. Troy against number 17 Texas Tech. I project Texas Tech by 38. And they're giving 26.5. So I'm going to lay the points with Chris Beard's team. And I'm getting value here at minus 106. Next up, Oregon against Seton Hall. That game is obviously not listed on FanDuel because Seton Hall is in New Jersey. I project Oregon by 6.5. They're our 2.5-point underdog to Seton Hall. So I'm taking Oregon plus the points. And I'm taking them to win straight up. And I don't have a money line for Oregon yet. But I'm going to take Oregon at the money line as well to win straight up. They'll get their first win of the year against a disappointing Seton Hall team. San Francisco and Cal Poly. I project I don't have a projection here yet. I think it should be San Francisco favored, as the Dons obviously had the big win over Virginia. So they obviously have everybody's attention. And they are 27, I project them 27.5 over Cal Poly. And I don't see a line on posted yet on any of the sites, so I'm just going to say San Francisco will probably win. All right, next up you got Minnesota hosting North Dakota. I project Minnesota by 16.5. They're favored by 21.5. So I'm going to take North Dakota plus the 21.5, although the juice is on them at minus 114. Next up, you got South Alabama at Auburn. I project Auburn by 9. They're giving 10.5. So I'm taking South Alabama plus the 10.5, although there's a ton of juice on them at minus 120. And it comes to a point where I can't bet on the line because it's too close of a call. I take over 143.5 and minus 110. But for right now, I'll take the big juice with South Alabama plus 10.5 at minus 120. Now, last but not least, 10 o'clock, Long Beach State against Loyola Marymount. I project Marymount by 8.5. They're giving 6.5. So I'm going to take Marymount minus the 6.5, although the juice is on them at minus 118. Rest of the weekend's games. Big slate tomorrow. 10 o'clock a.m. Columbia International Mercer. 12 o'clock NC State UConn on ESPNU. Don't have a projection in my head. If I had to pick a winner, I'm going to say UConn. 12 o'clock Bluefield Liberty. 1 o'clock CBS. Number 1 Gonzaga. Number 2 Baylor. This is too big of a game to not talk about. So I'm just going to do it in my head right now. I project Baylor by 1.5. Meanwhile, Gonzaga's 3.5. So I'm taking Baylor plus the 3.5 and for them to win straight up at plus 142 against Gonzaga. Toccoa Falls, the Citadel, Towson, UMBC. 1:30 Idaho, Sacramento State. 2 o'clock Northern Kentucky, Chattanooga. Coppin State, George Washington. Salem, Delaware. Furman, Charleston. Eastern Washington, Arizona. Marist, Binghamton. UIC, Ball State. Mount St. Mary's, VCU. SMU, Dayton, North Florida. High Point. SC State, UNC, Asheville. Radford, Eastern Carolina. Montana, Southern Utah. 3 o'clock Omaha, SIU, Edwardsville. Eastern Illinois, Green Bay. Lamar Air Force. Incarnate Word, Texas State. Maryland, James Madison. 4 o'clock North Dakota State at number 7, Kansas. Iona, Hofstra, Miami of Ohio, Wright State. Washington State, Colorado. St. Catherine, Dixie State. 4:30 Fairleigh Dickinson, Providence. 5 o'clock Chicago State, Northwestern. Sanford, Belmont. 6 o'clock South Carolina, number 10 Houston. I'd say Houston will probably win that game. Point Park, Robert Morris. Illinois State, Murray State is a good game. Georgia Southern, South Carolina, Upstate, Lipscomb, Arkansas. 7 o'clock Alabama, A&M at number 23 Ohio State. Northern Illinois, Pitt. Rider, Syracuse. Florida National, Florida Gulf Coast. Oakland, Oklahoma State at 7:30. 8 o'clock UMKC, South Dakota. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, St. Louis. Slow Ross, UTEP. Rice, Houston Baptist. Tarleton, Abilene Christian. UNLV, Kansas State. 9 o'clock Tennessee Martin at number 5 Illinois. BYU, Utah State's a nice game. And 10 o'clock Portland State, Portland. And on Sunday, Nevada, San Francisco, and Bellarmine and Howard are TBD times. Tennessee Tech, Western Carolina at 12 o'clock. 1 o'clock ESPN, number 12 Villanova against number 17 Texas. That's a nice win. I'd say Villanova wins. Lincoln, Pennsylvania, Niagara. 2 o'clock Grambling and number 17 Texas Tech. I'd say Texas Tech wins that easily. New Hampshire, Quinnipiac, Catawba, and Wake Forest. Judson College, Valparaiso. Cleveland State, Ohio. Florida A&M, Nebraska. IUPUI, Evansville. Coppin State, Drexel. Stetson, Florida. Jacksonville State, FIU. Missouri and Wichita State on ESPN2. I would say Wichita, but I don't feel good about it. Wofford Presbyterian, 2:30 Stony Brook, St. John's on Fox Sports 1. Yale Monroe, Northwestern State at 3 o'clock. St. Albro, Drake. UC Riverside, Denver. Central Arkansas, Little Rock, Carver, Northern Alabama. 3 o'clock ESPN, Xavier, Cincinnati. Rivalry game. That's a good one. I'd say Xavier, but I don't feel good about it. If they win this game, they're obviously going to be ranked next week. Troy, UAB, Central Michigan, Western Illinois. LaSalle Army at 4 o'clock. Binghamton, Marist, UCF, Michigan. Wyoming, Arkansas State. NC Wesleyan, App State. Seattle, Long Beach State. Texas, Rio Grande, Texas A&M. That's also 4 o'clock window. Oklahoma, TCU. So Big 12 game at 4 o'clock. I'm going to say that Oklahoma wins that one. I don't feel good about it. 4:30, number 11, West Virginia, Georgetown. I expect the Mountaineers to bounce back in that one after their loss to Gonzaga. Pepperdine, San Diego State. 5 o'clock ESPN, number 20, Kentucky at Georgia Tech. I expect the Wildcats to win that one. Quincy and Southern Illinois. Coastal Carolina and Mercer. 6 o'clock, Western Michigan at number 8, Michigan State. Howard Payne, Sam Houston State. DePaul, Iowa State on ESPNU. I'd say Iowa State, so DePaul making their season debut on Sunday. SEC Network, Louisiana Tech by LSU. Buffalo, Bowling Green, so some action on Sunday. Seton Hall, Penn State, 8 o'clock, Big Ten Network. That's a good little Big East, Big Ten game there. I'd say Seton Hall wins that one. Cal, UCLA at 8 o'clock, so a good Pac-12 game there. And then 10 o'clock Pacific against San Jose State. Alrighty then, now we'll go over college football from yesterday. Louisiana Tech over North Texas, 42-31. Louisiana Tech, their first game since Halloween. They're 5-3. North Texas, 3-5. Air Force, Utah State. Air Force comes out on top, 35-7. Air Force is 3-2, and Utah State is 1-5. All right, one game tonight. It's a pretty fun game. 8:30, ESPN, number 25, Louisiana at Appalachian State. I project App State as a 2-point favorite in the total 50.5. Meanwhile, FanDuel has it at App State 2.5, total 51.5. So my numbers are very, very close. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to take the under 51.5 at the juice at minus 115. I think App State will win, but the number is very, 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 very close to what I have it at. All right, first up, Iowa and Illinois. I project Iowa by 7.5, total 48.5. Meanwhile, Iowa, I don't even see that game on the bump for tomorrow. I'm making sure that COVID didn't cancel that game. Hang on here. 1 second, please, or maybe it's just that they don't have a line. Somebody must have got it injured or something. Let's see here. Yeah, Iowa, Illinois. Did they move it to another time? And they did. It's a 3:30 game. Whoops. So, that's bad on my part. We'll just do it now. So, Iowa's giving 13.5, total 51.5. I'm taking Illinois plus the points. Trap game for Iowa. I think Iowa will obviously still win the game. But I just think that Illinois will cover here. Next up, Ohio State and Michigan State. So Ohio State returns after their COVID hiatus. I project Ohio State as a 10.5 point favorite, total 58. Meanwhile, the Buckeyes are laying 24.5, total 59.5. I'm going to take Michigan State plus the points here to keep this game respectively close. All right. Next up, Texas A&M against Auburn. I project A&M as a 2-point underdog, total 51. Meanwhile, Auburn's a 6.5 point underdog, total 48.5. I love Auburn getting the 6.5, minus 114 juice though. And I love them on the money line at plus 198 as well. Penn State against Rutgers. I project Penn State by 7.5, total 61.5. Meanwhile, Penn State is favored by 10. And the total for this game this total sits at, let's see here, what's the total for this game? 55.5. I like the over, and then the juice is on the under, minus 114. So I'm going to take over 55.5 and minus 106. These are two very good offensive teams, and I think that Rutgers' defense is not very good. So give me over 55.5 for Penn State against Rutgers. Arkansas, Missouri. I project Arkansas as a 5.5 point underdog, total 51.5. Meanwhile, they're only a 2.5 point underdog, total 52.5. I'm laying the 2.5 with Missouri. Kansas and Texas Tech. I think I project Texas Tech by 10.5, total 66. Meanwhile, Texas Tech is giving a whopping 26.5, total 62.5. I'm taking the over. I just can't bet on Kansas. Memphis, Tulane. I project Memphis by 6.5, total 61.5. Meanwhile, Tulane's giving 1.5, total 62.5. I'm taking Memphis plus 1.5, and I like them straight up at plus 104. Nebraska, Purdue. I project Purdue by 2.5, total 53. Meanwhile, it's a pick'em and a total 62.5, so I'm going to take Purdue in the pick'em. Oklahoma State, TCU. I project Oklahoma State by 3, total 49.5. Meanwhile, it's a pick'em, total 51.5. I'm going to take the Cowboys in the pick'em. Rice and Marshall. I project Marshall by 17, total 48. Meanwhile, Marshall's favored by 23.5, total is 44.5. I am taking... Oof, this is tough. Let's go with the over 44.5. I just like Rice overs. Texas and Kansas State. I project Texas by 11.5, total 58. Meanwhile, Texas is favored by 6.5, total 50.5. I'm laying the 6.5 with the Longhorns, although it's heavily juiced at minus 122. Toledo against Northern Illinois. I project Toledo by 8, total of 60. Meanwhile, Toledo's favored by 7.5, total is 55.5. I'm going to take over 55.5. Western Carolina and North Carolina. North Carolina, I project it's a 39-point favorite, total 70. Meanwhile, their total is 70.5, and they're favored by 49.5. So I'm taking Western Carolina getting all those points to keep that within the number. Now we're in the 2 o'clock window. You got Ball State and Central Michigan. I project Central Michigan is a 3-point favorite, total 61.5. Meanwhile, it's a pick'em, total 61.5. So I'm going to take Central Michigan in the pick'em at minus 112. Bowling Green against Akron. I project this is a pick'em, total 62. Meanwhile, Akron's favored by 2.5, total is 57.5. I'm going to take over 57.5. Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan. I project Western by 10, total 67.5. Meanwhile, Western's favored by 13, total 66.5. I'm taking Eastern plus the 13.5. Values on it at minus 108. Troy, South Alabama. I project Troy as an 8.5-point favorite, total 48.5. Meanwhile, Troy's favored by 4.5, total 54.5. I'm going to lay the 4.5 with Troy, but I don't feel super about it, although I like under 54.5 as well, but there's juice on that. 2:30, Syracuse against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I have projected it's a 21.5 favorite, total 49. Meanwhile, they're favored by 33.5, total 52.5. So I'm going to take Syracuse plus the 33.5 and minus 108 to keep that within the number. 3 o'clock, Louisiana Monroe against Arkansas State. I project Arkansas State by 16.5, total 64. Meanwhile, Arkansas State's favored by 20.5, total 69.5. I'm going to take Yale Monroe plus 20.5. Arkansas State has been one of my bet-on teams all year, but they failed to do so. I'm betting against them this week. Louisiana Monroe plus 20.5 at minus 104. Boston College, Virginia. Virginia's laying 3.5, total 54.5. I project Virginia as a 7-point underdog, total 55.5. I'm taking Boston College plus a 3.5 at minus 106, and I'm taking them straight up at plus 154. Next up, Buffalo and Ohio. I project Buffalo by 4.5, total 58.5. Buffalo's giving 11.5, total 58.5. Ohio plus 11.5 at minus 112. Florida, Tennessee. I project Florida by 10, total 58.5. Meanwhile, Florida's favored by 17.5, total 62.5. I'm taking Tennessee plus a 17.5 to keep that within the number. Indiana, Wisconsin. I project Wisconsin by 5.5, total 49.5. It would have been 1.5 had the quarterback for Indiana not gotten injured. Wisconsin's laying 4.5, total 44.5. I am going to take the over here, 44.5 as my play. Even without the quarterback for Indiana, I just don't trust the Hoosiers' defense, and I think that the quarterback of Wisconsin, Mertz, could have a field day. So give me over 44.5, although the juice is on it at minus 114. Tulsa, Navy. I project Navy as a 4-point favorite, total 51.5, but Tulsa's giving 12.5, total 48.5. I'm taking Navy plus the 12.5, plus 410 on the money line. I think Navy wins outright. I think Tulsa's looking ahead a little bit to their game against Cincinnati. West Virginia, Iowa State. I project Iowa State by 14.5, total of 50. Meanwhile, Iowa State's giving 6.5, total 49.5. I'm laying the 6.5 with Iowa State against the Mountaineers. All due respect to Neil Brown and company, who have exceeded expectations this year, in my opinion. I think that Iowa State is going to win this game big. I love the Cyclones here. Georgia Tech and North Carolina State, 4 o'clock window now. I project NC State by 13.5, total 62.5. Meanwhile, NC State's giving 6.5, total 60.5. I'm laying it with NC State minus the 6.5. Stanford and Washington. Washington projected 5.5 point favorite, total 54.5. Meanwhile, Washington's giving 11.5, total 50.5. I'm going to take Stanford plus 11.5 and minus 112 to keep that within the number. Vandy and Georgia. I project Georgia by 22, total 50. Georgia's giving 35.5, total 53.5. I'm going to take the under 53.5. I just can't stand betting on Vandy. BYU, Coastal Carolina. I project BYU by 9.5, total 56.5. Meanwhile, BYU's giving 10.5, total 61.5. I am going to, for this game, this is so tough. This is so hard, guys. Part of me wants to take the under, but both of these teams are very good offensively. And that's the only pick I have. Because my line's a point apart. I have a little value on Coastal. But I'm going to go under 61.5, minus 106, so there's some value there on the under. And that's a 5:30 game on ESPNU, and Game Day gets this game, and deservingly so. And obviously, Coastal was supposed to play Liberty, but Liberty has COVID issues, so BYU's taking their place, and it's going to be very, very fun tomorrow night. Florida Atlantic and Georgia Southern, 6 o'clock window now. I project FAU by 1.5, total of 40. Meanwhile, Georgia Southern is giving 1.5, total of 41.5. I'm going to take FAU plus 1.5 and plus 108 straight up. Meanwhile, plus 1.5 and minus 105. San Jose State, Hawaii. I project San Jose State by 2, total of 55. Meanwhile, San Jose State's giving 2.5, total of 59.5. I'm taking under 59.5 and minus 112. San Jose State's defense is a little bit better than people think, so I'm going to go with the under. 7 o'clock window now, Colorado and Arizona. Colorado is giving, I have them projected giving 7.5, total 60. Meanwhile, they're giving 7.5, total 57.5. So I got the line correct here. I have no choice but to take the over 57.5 and minus 110, and I actually like it. Colorado State and San Diego State. I project San Diego State by 5, total 49.5. Meanwhile, they're favored by 7.5, total 47.5. I'm going to take Colorado State plus 7.5 and minus 112. Oregon and Cal. I have projected Oregon 9.5, total 58. Meanwhile, Oregon's giving 8.5, total 58.5. So the numbers are very, very close here. I have to go with Oregon minus 8.5 and minus 112. I have to. 7:30 ABC, Clemson, Virginia Tech. I have projected as a 12-point underdog, total 66. Meanwhile, they're a 22.5 point underdog in the total 67.5. I'm going to take Virginia Tech plus the 22.5 to keep it within the number. And I won't be shocked if this game is somewhat close in the third quarter. South Carolina and Kentucky. I project Kentucky by 4.5, total 52. Meanwhile, Kentucky's laying 11.5, total 46.5. I'm going to take South Carolina plus 11.5 to keep this game somewhat close. I project Alabama as a 13 favorite, total 6.5. Meanwhile, Alabama's a whopping 29.5 point favorite, total 66.5. I have to take LSU plus a 29.5. That's too big of a number, especially for the reigning champions. LSU did me good last week. I expect them to do me good again this week. Minus 112 plus 29.5. Baylor and Oklahoma. I project Oklahoma by 13. Total 61.5. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's giving 21.5, total 62.5. I'm going to take Baylor plus 21.5 and minus 114 to keep this game somewhat close. Miami and Duke. I project the Canes by 22, total 58. Meanwhile, they're giving 14.5, total 59.5. I'm going to lay to 14.5 with Miami against Duke. I think Duke's terrible. 10:30, Fresno State, Nevada. I have this projected as a pick'em, total 55. Meanwhile, Nevada's giving 6.5, total 58.5. I'm taking Fresno plus the points here. I don't know if they'll win, but I just think this is a close game. Oregon State and Utah. I project Utah by 2.5, total 52.5. Meanwhile, Utah's giving 11.5, total 51.5. I'm taking Oregon State plus the 1.5. UCLA, Arizona State. I project this as a pick'em, total 57.5. Meanwhile, Arizona State's giving 2.5, total 54.5. It's their game back. I'm taking UCLA plus the 2.5. Will they win the game outright? I don't know. But I just like plus 2.5 at plus 102, which is extremely valuable. Wyoming against New Mexico. I project 1.5. I'm going to take New Mexico plus 17.5 at minus 106. Sunday, there's two games. Western Kentucky against Charlotte. This is a makeup game from last week. I project Western Kentucky by total 58.5. Well, Charlotte's giving 1.5 total 47.5. I'm taking Western Kentucky plus 1.5, and I think they'll win the game outright. I like them at plus 100 straight up. And Washington against USC, Sunday night under the lights. I project USC by total 63. And USC is giving 12.5, and the total is 66.5. I'm taking Washington State plus 2.5 to keep that game close at the Coliseum. All right, so now we'll move on to the NFL picks for the weekend. We don't know a lot of things from an injury standpoint, so this is going to be pretty difficult to pick. We'll just do the Sunday games because there's obviously 3 games being played on Monday and Tuesday combined. We'll save those for Monday and Tuesday. All right, first up, Cincinnati, Miami. I project the Dolphins by 10.5, total 44.5. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are laying 11.5, total 42.5. I'm going to take the over 42.5. This is based on solely that I think Cincinnati's defense is terrible, and I think that Miami's offense is due for a good game. So give me over 42.5. Cleveland against Tennessee. I project Tennessee by a half, total 51.5. Meanwhile, Tennessee's giving a whopping 5.5, total 53.5. I'm going to take the Browns plus 5.5. I don't think they'll win the game, but I like Browns plus 5.5 at minus 108 especially. Lions, Bears. I project the Bears by 1, total 47. Meanwhile, the Bears are giving 3, total 44.5. I'm going to take... This is very hard. I'm going to take the Lions plus the 3. I have no choice. I don't like Mitch Trubisky at all. I think the Lions are due for a good game. I'm taking Lions plus 3. I don't know if they'll win the game outright, but I like Lions plus 3 at minus 105. Colts, Texans. I project the Colts by 3.5, total 49. Meanwhile, the Colts are giving 3.5. The total is 50.5. So my numbers are pretty tight here. I'm going to take under 50.5, and I think the Colts defense bounces back because they get DeForest Buckner back this week off the COVID list. Jacksonville against Minnesota. I project Minnesota by 10.5, total 44.5. Meanwhile, Minnesota's favored by 10.5, and the total is 51. I'm going to take under 51. I think that the Jacksonville offense stinks, regardless of who's at quarterback. So give me under 51. Next up, Raiders, Jets. I project the Raiders by 6.5, total 49. Meanwhile, the Raiders are giving 9. The total is 47. I'm taking the Jets plus 9 at minus 112 to keep that within the number. And I don't like what I've seen from the Raiders the last couple weeks. Saints, Falcons. I project Saints by 1, total 57.5. Meanwhile, the Saints are favored by 2.5, and the total is 45.5. I love the over here, especially minus 104. I think Atlanta's offense is due for a bounce back, and I still think that the Saints offense has some potential of scoring 30 points, even with Taysom Hill. Now we're in the 4 o'clock window. Rams, Cardinals. I project the Rams by... I project this as a pick'em, total 47. Meanwhile, the Rams are 3-point favorites, total 48.5. I'm taking the Cardinals plus the 3. Juices on them at minus 128. And you know what? Screw it. I'm going to say Arizona wins outright, plus 128 on the money line. Giants, Seahawks. I project Seattle by 6, total 50, but without Daniel Jones, Seattle 10. And the total stays at 50. So total 47.5. With Daniel Jones, I'd like the over, but I just think the Giants defense has shown some leaks lately. I didn't like that they gave up a special teams touchdown last week. I hate that it's 47.5. If Daniel Jones plays, the Giants are a no-brainer at plus 10. If Daniel Jones doesn't play, I hate the over. I hate this pick. But I'm going to say over 47.5. But if Daniel Jones plays, I'm taking Giants plus 10 to keep it close. Patriots, Chargers. I project the Chargers by 1, total 47.5. Meanwhile, the Patriots are favored by 1 and the total is 47.5. So I'm taking the Chargers plus the 1 and minus 106 straight up. Eagles, Packers. The Packers are 8.5-point favorites. Total 48. Meanwhile, project the Packers by 4 and a total of 50.5. I'm taking the Eagles plus 8.5. And there's value there at minus 105. Sunday Night Football. I hate this game. Broncos, Chiefs. Drew Lock back for Denver. Chiefs are favored by 9. Total 49. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are favored by 13.5. Total of 50.5. I'm taking the Broncos plus the 13.5. Drew Lock's back. Division game, I think this is closer than 13.5. I'd say the Chiefs win by 10. And obviously, we'll save the games for Monday and Tuesday for those respective shows. All right, some news coming in, hockey related. We haven't talked much NHL and chances that they will come back shortly. Pierre LeBrun reports, as per NHL and NHLPA talks last night, 52 game and 56 game, both on the table, but sources say both the league and the Players Association would prefer 56 games if the time allows. Remember that they want to end the Cup final in early July. Again, nothing done yet. Economic issues remain. Alrighty, so I think that this is going to get done within the next week. And I really think it has to be done by next week. There's rumors about a possible January 15th start date, which is a Friday. And I think Martin Luther King on the 18th is very, very realistic for opening night for hockey. I was hoping for January 1st, but I think that's off the table because we're already at December 4th. So my prediction is that hockey will start on Martin Luther King Day, if not potentially before. Martin Luther King Day, I think, is very realistic for hockey. I think it would be an interesting day to start the season because obviously it's a holiday and people are off from work and school respectively. And something that, by the way, I'm going to be covering on this podcast is the World Juniors because there's a lot of hockey prospects in there. There's a report out last night that the Rangers are not loaning Alexis Lafreniere to Canada, and that is the right call by the Rangers. And that tells me that the Rangers seem to think that there's going to be a season and it's going to start sooner rather than later. The fact that they won't lend Lafreniere to Canada is a good sign to me in terms of what some of the teams think about the season. So the fact that the Rangers aren't lending the number 1 overall pick to Canada tells me that the Rangers believe that there's going to be a season that starts sooner rather than later. So that is something that is a sneaky storyline that just came out last night that I wanted to talk about. So NHL, they talked 56 games I think is realistic, and I think we'll see some back-to-backs. And I think we'll see back-to-backs in the playoffs like we saw this year and even in the past years as well. So I think 56 games is realistic. Obviously, no All-Star game, no Winter Classic, which stings. But I won't be shocked if there's some random outdoor games throughout the season. So that's something else to keep an eye on. So obviously, if anything else hockey-related breaks, we will talk about it on the podcast. And one more thing before the Fab 5 and Best Bet. There's an NBA trade that happened on Wednesday night. The Washington Wizards traded John Wall and a protected first round 2023 pick to the Houston Rockets for Russell Westbrook. My goodness. I think that Washington got themselves a steal. John Wall, you botched the John Wall contract and gave up a 2023 protected first round pick? Are you kidding me? What a steal for the Wizards. I think this puts them in the playoff picture in Eastern Conference. You got Westbrook and Bradley Beal. And you got Bertans back. Rui Hachimura is a nice young player. You have Thomas Bryant at center. And you pick Denny Avdija in the draft. I love that Wizards team. And Scotty Brooks obviously is the coach. And the other storyline about this is that Scotty Brooks and Russell Westbrook, obviously there was the OKC tie, and Brooks coached Westbrook for 7 years in Oklahoma City. So, obviously there's a familiarity there. So, yeah, what a great trade for the Washington Wizards. And meanwhile, for the Rockets, the John Wall contract in the first, I don't think is enough for Westbrook. I'm sorry. So now you're looking at Wall, James Harden, Christian Wood, and obviously they trade Robert Covington. So, they really don't have much there in Houston. I don't think that's a playoff team in the West because the Suns got better. Golden State has Steph Curry back, so they should be better, even though they don't have Klay Thompson. New Orleans is obviously better. You expect Zion to get better. The Mavericks are a contender with Luka and Porzingis. The Suns added Chris Paul, so the Rockets obviously are worse, and they're worse without Westbrook. So I don't think that's a playoff team, and I think there's a chance that Harden is not on the Rockets before opening night. All right, now without further ado, Fab 5 and Best Bet. All right, we'll start with college football for the Fab 5. So the first of the Fab 5 picks for me for week number 14, I'm going to go with Memphis plus 1.5 against Tulane. I think that Memphis is very, very valuable here, and Tulane always finds ways to lose games. So give me Memphis plus 1.5 at minus 106 for the first pick of the Fab 5. All right. Next up, in the Fab 5, I'm going to go with, this is really, really tough because there's a lot of interesting games. Boston College 3 in the hook against Virginia at minus 106. I just think Boston College is due for a little breakthrough. I'm not in love with this Virginia team, although they've picked off some people lately. I just think this is close. Virginia by 3, and I still win. Auburn plus 6.5 against Texas A&M. I love that pick. I think Texas A&M is super overhyped right now. All due respect, they're 5th in the playoff rankings. I get it, but they're not beating Alabama. They're not getting past them. And Auburn, I think, is in a good spot here as a home underdog. And they're my money line pick of the week, too, at plus 198. Next up, I'm going to go with Iowa State against West Virginia. They're laying 6.5. I don't love this pick, but I have to do it. I have a big edge in Iowa State. I think that Matt Campbell's team will be ready to go. I'm not in love with West Virginia's offense, so I'm going to lay the 6.5 here with Iowa State. And in my last pick of the Fab Five. LSU plus 29.5 against Alabama. I just have to do it, guys. Juice is on them at minus 112, though, but I just think that's a closer than expected ball game in some sorts. All right, the NFL Fab Five now. Alrighty. First one. Browns plus 5.5 against the Titans. So, I just think that is a much closer game than people expect. And I think the Browns have an outside shot of winning this game outright. So, plus 5.5 with the Browns at minus 108. Next up, I'm going to take... there's so many hard calls. Because I just think that some of these lines are really really good, and I think that these are just very, very hard calls. I hate to do this to myself again, but I'm taking the over 44.5 in the Saints-Falcons game. Like I said, I think that Atlanta's offense still has some potential that they really haven't reached yet. I'm just banking on potential with this pick. Next up, another pick I just hate, but I have to do it. Eagles 8.5 at Green Bay. I just think that this is a little bit closer. Eagles know that they have a division to play for. And the Packers as big favorites lately at home, with the exception of the Bears game, really some head scratchers, especially against Jacksonville. And obviously, Green Bay destroyed the Bears, but we all know the Bears stink. So and so do the Eagles, but I think that the Eagles can cover and backdoor them. And then my next two picks in terms of the Fab Five will be reserved for Monday and Tuesday, respectively. And my moneyline pick of the week, free NFL, the Arizona Cardinals at plus 128 against the Los Angeles Rams. And then now my best bet of the day, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm going to go in college basketball. And the pick is going to be Jacksonville State plus the 5.5 against FIU. I think they should be favored. I think they'll win the game straight up. So give me Jacksonville State plus the 5.5 against FIU for my best bet of the day. All right, that's it for the podcast. I'll be back on Monday recapping everything from the weekend, from the NFL, college football, and college basketball, and look ahead to the games on Monday night in the NFL and in college basketball. Any other news that breaks hockey, NBA related, I'll have for you on the podcast, as well as Major League Baseball as well. Hope you guys have a great weekend, everyone.